Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now our trip at this point required us to take a train. So in this video I'm going to give you an in-depth look on how to get your bikes on a train in Europe and the best trains to take. Now if you find this video useful, please like and subscribe, and why not visit our Patreon. Now in this video we're going to talk about our plan. We're going to talk about the types of trains. We're going to talk about the best trains to get yourself on. We're going to talk about booking a ticket. And then finally, I'm going to give you some advice, tips and tricks on using trains in Europe. Now we got to Dijon. We had an overnight in Dijon. And the plan was for us to get to Passau in Germany. Now, this entailed us getting basically some trains. And so the plan was to get a train basically from Dijon to Strasbourg in the most direct route that we could. That meant that we needed to go through Dijon, Belfort, Mulhouse, Strasbourg, and originally the plan was to overnight in Strasbourg before we headed to Passau, but we had a quick change of plan and we then headed across the Rhine, literally a 30-minute train ride into a small town called Offenburg. Now before we move on, I would just like to explain the types of train that you're going to experience in France. Now they're pretty much the same Europe-wide, although different countries have different names for them. To this end, for my patrons, I've created an ebook which highlights the train names and the advantages for different types of travel with bikes. And that can be found in my Patreon. So please head over there and subscribe if that's what you would like to do. Now we're going to run through the three types of trains and the basic requirements for bicycle travel. Now the first group is the TGV. Now these are the super fast trains, and their general requirement for bicycle travel is that the bikes have to be dismantled and in a cover, and you need a ticket. And the bike cover itself cannot be bigger than a certain size. Now the next group of trains are called TERs. Now these are grouped into two types, the regional TER and the intercity TER. Now generally there is bike spaces on these trains. Your bike doesn't need to be dismantled and it doesn't need to be in a bag, and generally you don't need a ticket. However, on some of the intercity TERs, you may need a ticket. Now, before we move on to actually book your train tickets, I'm just going to explain to you the best trains to get and why. Now, my advice is, if you are travelling with a bicycle, avoid the TGVs at all cost. Yes, your trip is going to take longer. However, TGVs really, they're basically just like aeroplanes. They're laid out in a similar fashion, and there is just not any room in these carriages for bikes. And in the past, although it wasn't in France, it was in Italy, I was actually kicked off a TGV because the guard didn't like my bike. And that was in lieu of the fact that I did have a ticket for the bike and it was dismantled and in a bag, and yet he still kicked me off. Now with the TERs, generally you should have no issues with your bike unless it is very busy. So if there's a lot of people on with bikes, then you may not get on. But on this last trip, we really didn't have any issues, and the trains were quite busy with bikes. Now, out of the TERs, Now, my preference with the tours is the regional tour, because their doors come level with the platform. There's no step. You can basically just wheel your bike on. However, with the intercity tours, generally the carriages that they pull have steps, and they can be quite high and quite steep. Now, this isn't too much of a problem if you get on the train at the beginning of its journey. However, it can be an issue if you are getting on the train partway through its journey, because the trains generally only stop for about 2 minutes. And if you've got a load of bags like your panniers or a trailer or whatever, you have to get them up these stairs and get your bike up the stairs as well. And this can cause a bit of stress. A couple of important things that you need to bear in mind when traveling on trains in Europe. Firstly, you don't know which platform the train is going to arrive on until roughly about between 20 and 30 minutes before your trip. So if you're on platform 1 and the station's got 9 platforms, you've got to try and get yourself to platform 9 in the correct amount of time. And be prepared that the platform may change. You might get to platform 9 and then they've changed it to platform 7. Secondly, lifts. Some stations do not have lifts. So if you've got a bike and all your bags and everything, you've got to get your bike downstairs, or it can be just a nightmare, getting your bike downstairs with all your bags and such like. And sometimes the lifts are too small, so you might get your bike and it just fits in, and you still have to take your bags off. And as I said earlier, generally the trains only stop at stations for between 2 or 3 minutes. Now, I haven't experienced a train pulling off as we're getting on, thankfully. However, it can be a bit of a rush, and it can be quite a stressful situation. But above all, plan for your trip. Now, I'll run into this. I'll run through this in depth later on in the video. But planning is a big thing to make your trip less stressful. Now, I use the SNCF app to book the trains. Now, pretty much every train company in Europe, I think, has their own app these days. The SNCF one is a bit backwards, because what you have to do is type in your destination first. So we're going to go to Mulhouse, which is the trip that we did, and then it brings up any selection for Mulhouse. So we're going there, Mulhouseville, and we're going to leave from Dijon. There you go, Dijon. We want, if possible, go direct travel. Basically, direct stops you, or hopefully will stop you having to change. And we're not going to travel via anywhere. Let's just, and then you go search, see prices. Now, what we also need to do is, you can see down here that it's trying to send you via TGV, and ideally with a bike, you don't want to be on the TGVs. So you come up here and you go type of train, tour, which are obviously the regional type trains. And then it gives you obviously the cost and the time. So for instance, 2:09 p.m. from Dijonville and we've got to change a few times, which is unfortunate. And you see their tour, and you get a free bike space. Now, just so happened that on this leg here, this first leg, the one to Dijonville to Biscon, and then Biscon to Belfort, it was actually the same train. So stayed on the platform, we got off the train and then found out that we could get back on that same train again. So it worked out all quite well. You can then go off and buy your tickets, and they're saved in the app on your phone. Now, just a quick tip: when you buy your tickets and you save them in the app on your phone, I suggest you take a screenshot as well, just in case you don't have internet connection and the ticket collector comes around to check your ticket and you don't have internet connection. At least you can show them your ticket to avoid any hassle. And that's how we booked our tickets. So this is generally what the bike storages look like on most trains. So for instance, this stowage here would take 3 bikes on each side. Now, to wrap up this video, here follows some advice that could make your trip a lot easier. Firstly, allow enough time. Now, we basically got to the station an hour before our train was due to arrive, and when planning connections, we left at least an hour between connections, giving us time to change platforms if needed. If we had time, for instance, if we were in a particular location the night before, we would actually recce the train station that night just to make sure that we knew where we were going the next day. Be prepared to take your luggage, and i.e. your bags, off your bike. Just be ready. It might be the case that you get one of these trains that has the high steps into the carriage. Keep an eye on your luggage at stations. There are opportunist thieves on these trains who find, obviously, luggage as easy targets. On the subject of security, just be aware in the station of where you're standing. Just be aware of pickpockets and people that look out of place. If possible, book your tickets in advance. We had one occasion where we needed to we were planning to move on the next day. There'd been a festival in the town and all the trains were fully booked. So we had to stay there an extra night. Now that concludes this video. I hope you found it useful. If you have, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to get notified of our next video. And our next video is going to be Passau to Budapest on the Eurovelo 6, and I can't wait to bring it to you. Now I'll see you in the next one.